Hello and welcome to KennyRoy.com. I'm Kenny Roy. This is the Ask Videomail for the week of July 4th, 2011. Happy Independence Day to all the Americans out there. Thank you for being at the site. Thank you for supporting and watching these videos. Welcome back. The Ask Videomail, don't forget, is your chance to get your question in character animation or performance answered in a video just like this one. So you have to ask your question. If you want it answered, send your questions to webmaster@kennyroy.com. I will go through all the questions and I answer the ones that I think will help the most people. I can always use more questions. Please send in your questions. I love to answer them. I love to read them. Hopefully you'll get one answered soon. This is very fun Ask Videomail. It's a little bit of a change of pace. You'll see what I mean when you see the question. So let's take a look. Not a big deal that it's not like an animation question, but this is actually something that's super important to know how to do on the job. So I don't want to just give 100% like, oh, how do you know when to make the eyes blink and stuff like that. There's a lot that, we'll always have enough of that kind of stuff to go over, but I wanted to give you every once in a while like tips like this, which is like how to make sure that you're not stuck on the job and need to be completely bailed out by somebody who knows what to do. I'll tell you this much. I know some supervisors who have told me like, oh man, I have this one animator who anytime there's like a rig broken or anytime anyone else has a problem, he's always jumping in, stepping up and helping people out, and I can just sit back and relax, and this person's so great. So that person has a lot of job security because no one wants to get rid of someone who solves problems. But if you're causing problems, then that's a different story. So I'm gonna show you how to basically correctly rig your prop for animation. Now, first and foremost, why are we rigging props? Why do props need rigs? Well, first of all, when you are animating the geometry itself, basically you're adding keyframes to a piece of geometry that may change, may have a different topology later on down the road. And most of all, and worst of all, really, you are basically creating animation on a node that for pretty much the rest of the pipeline or an entire feature pipeline or even a commercial pipeline really shouldn't have any transform information on it. All right, pretty much all of the, shall we say, pretty much all the pipelines I've ever seen pretty much rely on the fact that geometry doesn't ever have transforms on it. Okay, so let's just dive right in. Okay, first thing, also you should get this script. It's called KK Controllers, KK_controllers. It's free from creativecrash.com. It's an awesome script. It has a lot of controllers that it builds for you out of NURBS curves. You can recolor them. You can lock channels. You can do a lot with it, and you're going to see me use KK controllers. So that's the one script you need in order to do this tutorial. So let's just take a look. Here I have a bat. It's a baseball bat. And it's very low poly, as you can see. I'm just going to turn on the wireframe view. Super low poly, because I like to use the mental ray automatic subdivision by hitting 3. What that does is subdivides it and shows you a preview of the subdivision levels that it's going to give you at render time. But if you hit 1, it goes back to your low poly version. That's nice because you can animate really, really quickly, and when it comes time to render, you can hit 3. Now there's a node upon which you should hit 3, and that's the Geo group as well, and I'll show you how to make that as well. But basically, I whip this up, and this has all of the problems that you're going to have to sort out when you're working on a prop rig. Okay. So let's just go into it. First thing that I want to show you is that the pivot point of this object is off the origin. And if you go into the channel box, you'll see that there's actually some translates and rotates on there. All right. What you always want to have is the point that the object is going to be, if you're going to rig your prop, all right, not something like a telephone on a desk or something like that, nothing like that. But if you're going to rig a prop that's going to be held, that point where the controller is going to be and the hand is holding it should always be at the origin, and the transform should always be frozen. So what does that mean? Transforms frozen means that there's 0 in all of these translate and rotates and 1 in all the scales. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, the hand is going to be somewhere down here, all right? So I'm going to move it somewhere like right there, and then I'm going to hold down the D key. The D key allows you to move the pivot. So now the pivot's out there, and you can see because it's rotating around that pivot now, all right? So I'm going to hold the D key, and I'm going to snap it by holding down X at the same time as holding down D to the origin. Boom. Now I just snapped the pivot to the origin, which is exactly where I want the controller for this prop as well. And now you'll still see that there's all of that, that stuff over there. I'm just going to go to edit, modify, and then freeze transformations. And open up your freeze transformations, make sure that all of these are checked, okay? I froze it, now all the translates and rotates are 0, the scale is 1, and now we have a frozen model. Next thing you want to do is you want to remove your history. Alt-Shift-D removes history. Check out over here, all of these inputs. Now it has no history, it is a clean mesh, and it's ready to rock and roll. We also want to be really good about naming conventions. So I'm going to call this bat_geo. I like to call it geo rather than mesh, or there's a different, some people call it polys. I like to call it geo, but just as long as you are consistent, it's fine. So I'm going to hit enter, and it's automatically going to rename the shape node as well. That's fine. Okay, now let's go into the outliner. As you can see, bat_geo is on the top. It's an empty scene with just bat_geo, and even if this is all you did, this would be a lot better than creating a prop and in your animation shot and then just animating away with it. You always want to reference in every single one of your props and rigs. So if you have a character swinging a bat, for instance, once he needs that bat, save the scene, open up a new scene, create the bat, and if this is where you stop, if you're like, it doesn't really matter, I'm gonna use the bat once, I'm not gonna reuse it, it's never gonna change, this would be an okay place to stop. But let's just go through the rest of it, and you'll see what I mean. Okay. So I like the rig to always be in its own group, so that I can select one group, and that entire group, or everything that goes into that rig, your controls, your geometry, all your constraints, everything is in one group. Different auto rig scripts, like AB Auto Rig does something different. So does Setup Machine. Most of them create a control that is the master control, and then the group, there's a group for geometry that's outside of that. So you actually start filling up the outliner. The reason I like to do this, and this is only with props, not with characters, for sure, not at all. But the reason I like to do this with props is because that group is a really quick way to do a lot with the prop. Create a display layer, create a render layer, create hide it or display it. A whole lot of things, okay? And also you can duplicate if you're importing your props, which you should reference everything, but if you're importing your props, you can duplicate, and instance your transforms and be good, okay? So let's go back to it. Now what we're going to do is we're going to create that group. I'm going to select the bat_geo in the outliner, hit Control G, and the group also has the origin at the pivot point, which is 0, and I'm going to rename the group bat_rig. Okay. Now inside my rig, I like to have a group just for the geo. Why? Because we're going to do all of our constraints on the group and not the geo itself. Why? Let's say I want to, well, I'll show you. I'll mention that again when I go back to it, okay? So I'm going to grab the geo one more time. I'm going to group it again. And I'm going to type in bat underscore geo underscore group. I like to do GRP for group. It doesn't really matter. Okay? Now, let's open up KK controllers. I love it. Okay? This script is, again, free on creativecrash.com. It has a very easy to use interface, and one of the nicest things about it is that it creates the controller that you select from this list right here at the pivot point of the object. That's really cool, because when you're rigging a character or whatever, you'll have all this stuff all over the screen. You'll just select it and then boom, hit the controller button, and you'll get a control right there, ready for you to manipulate. So a bat, what you should do is you always choose a controller that is kind of indicative of the shape of the geometry, or at least what kind of motion you're going to get out of this control. Normally, for anything that is IK or moves in all directions, a box is appropriate. So this is a lot better than actually going up to curves and creating a NURBS square, because the NURBS square actually has 4 NURBS lines in a group, and it's a pain in the butt. KK controller says to do that. So I'm just going to click on this square, and there you have it. We have a square, or a cube, sorry. Okay? And it is zeroed and ready to rock. Let's change the color so that it's easy to read. Yellow is a pretty standard color for rig controls. Okay? So now I'm going to rename this really quickly. Bat underscore, again, we're always going to use the same naming convention, underscore CTRL. I like to call it control. Okay? Bat control. Now the bat control is not controlling the bat. How do we do that? Easy. I like to just grab the control, grab the group, make sure you're in the animation menu set, and then go up to constrain, and it's really simple. Just go parent and then scale. All right, you see how I tore off? I'll do it again. Constrain, you use this dashed line to tear off a menu. Otherwise, you'd have to go constrain, parent, and then boom, constrain again, scale, and that's just a pain in the butt. Who wants to do that? So I like to tear it off and just go boom, parent, scale, done. All right. Now you'll see when I rotate this around, there you have it. It works miraculously. Okay. Now, this is the point that I said I was going to bring back up. Why did I create a geo group? Here's why. Because if I go and let's put a nail into this, into this bat. Subdivision cap 2. And I'm just going to extrude this. Let's shrink it a little bit. And now let's have it sticking out of the top of the bat like this. Okay. All right, so now we have this nail sticking out of this bat. Let me turn off wireframe. So there we go. Now we have this nail sticking out of this bat, right? In fact, let's make a couple. This is looking pretty mean now. There. All right, so now it's looking like, oh my gosh, this is like a dangerous weapon. Well, if I added that, then I would have to create new constraints for every single object that I added. Instead of doing that, all I have to do is select these objects, grab the geo group and hit P to parent them, or I can middle mouse drag them in the outliner, and I grab my control, and voila, they're in there. So I can actually add anything I want to the geo group, and it'll be controlled by this controller. Let's go ahead and drag the control into the rig group so that it's all underneath that rig group. Okay. Now, the reason we did a scale constraint is so that we can scale up and down the control. Why I don't like to scale up and down the rig even though it works, is because you don't want to be selecting your controls and go through and see, now I select it and it says scale of 1 over here in the outliner. You don't want to do that because you want to know exactly, let's say you're doing a really cartoony shot where, you know, the guy swings the bat and you're stretching it or you're making it bigger as he swings it to like really give this impact of, you know, the size or whatever. You don't want to select your control and be fooled by over here where that scale is wrong. So I definitely like to make sure that the controls actually control the scale as well and don't do any scaling on any group instead, even though it works. You know, even though it works. Another thing that's interesting about that is that right now the scale constraint on the Geo group underneath the bat rig group is actually fighting against scaling that wants to happen just because this Geo group is a child of the bat rig group. Advanced people will know what I'm talking about when I say that. Everyone else might have a little bit of a problem. Okay, so there you have it. Now here's one more thing that you can do. Let's say you want to have a secondary point of control. Let's say, I don't know. For instance, you have, what's a good example? Like, oh, this bat. Let's say this person is going to be like hitting this bat on their hand, and you might want to build that control in just so that you can use it at all times. I'm going to select the Geo again. I'm going to create a new control. This time I did this kind of like ball control. And I did that because it has all of these, what do you call these? I don't know, like these extremities shooting out. And it looks a lot different to my other control. I'm going to select it. I'm going to give it a different color. Let's say green. Okay. So what you want to have happen is for this control to be riding around in the same as the bat. You don't want it to be left behind, but you also want to be able to parent constrain stuff to this control. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're just going to do that with an offset. All right, so underneath, let's call this bat underscore. Let's just do SEC to stand for secondary and then control. Let's put it into the bat rig group. Let's freeze transformations so that this is its home. Okay, so if I move it over here or down here and then I zero it, it snaps back. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to create an offset. Why? Because we want to be able to, let's say we could constrain a hand to this. We want to be able to animate this control within the object space of the bat and then have a little bit of control, okay, even if it's still constrained. So all we're going to do is we're just going to in the outliner, select this control, make another group, call this bat underscore control offset, okay? And then it's very, very, very simple from here on in. You don't absolutely have to snap the pivot of this group to your control. It's really not important because parent and scale constraints, will work anyway. But I like to, just so that I know where my group's pivots are at all times. So I'm just going to hit D to move the pivot of the group, and then hold down V as well, D and V at the same time, and then snap it to this point right here on my control. All right, and then the rest is simple. Grab my main control select in the outliner my bat control offset group, go back up to the animation menu set, tear off my constraint panel, parent, scale, done. Okay, now I have a control that moves the bat around. I can drop any geometry. Let's just really quickly, snap a cone right here. I'm not sure what the heck that would be. I don't know, but just whatever, a little divot on the bat. And I'm just going to drop it into the Geo group, and you see it rides along. So we have a group that I can add all of my Geo to. Okay, we have a control that rides around with the bat, but also we can move it, and it's not constrained itself. It's actually just, you know, parented under the group that's constrained, so it won't like snap back, because constraints don't work like that, right? Constraints, you can only animate the strength of the connection, not the position of the connection. So I'm just going to put a little bit of animation on this, okay? And then I'm going to animate this guy going down the bat and then back up the bat. And then we're just going to play this back and make sure everything is working correctly. Okay, great. I'm just going to delete this animation by right-clicking on my selected channels and hitting delete selected. What that does is that actually deletes the animation curve, but it doesn't freeze the transformations. So I'm just going to go back here. You can either zero them out here or just select the object, go modify, reset transformations, and it returns it to its origin. Okay? And there you have it. Now we have one group, bat rig, okay, and everything is you know, looking great, looking perfect. Okay, now remember, having that one group is so great because now, boom, I can make a display layer and I can hide and show the bat. All right, I can, boom, make a render layer and have different render settings for my bat. Not only that, the bat rig group is a great group to select and then hit 3, so that you can smooth your geometry for render time, okay? So it's really nice if you have a scene that you're doing this to have just all of these groups over in the side, and then you can grab them and just shift and select them all, and then boom, hit 3, and then your geometry is ready for render. One other way you can do that is actually by adding a smooth. So let me show you how to do that. You can't add a smooth to the geometry, to the group, unfortunately. You have to add it to the geometry itself. One nice thing, though, is that you can use a connection editor to make it a lot simpler. But we're going to just do it on the bat geometry itself, and not the nails. All right, but you can pretty much surmise how to do that yourself. I'm going to go up to the modeling or the polygons menu set, go mesh, smooth. And then you see that these have already been, wow, there's a lot of, there we go. All right, so my settings were all messed up. All right, so one thing we can do, all we need is to add the right attribute to this control. So we're just going to go up to edit and then add attribute in the control panel, or sorry, the channel box. And then the name is going to be just simply smooth. Make it an integer. And make the minimum 0, the maximum 4, and then the default is 0, and add it. You'll notice that it added a smooth attribute over here in the channel box. It's very simple from here on in. We're going to make a simple connection. Go up to Window, General Editors, and then Connection Editor. This is how you connect attributes. Basically, it is a one-way connection, and the attribute can never be different than the attribute that is driving it. Okay, so we on the left is the one that is actually controlling the attributes on the right, and so we had our bat control selected, and it will automatically load it. If you don't have anything in here, all you have to do is select the control and then reload left. We're going to select the bat, but also select the poly smooth face 1 attribute or input on the bat and hit reload right. It's very simple from here on in. Just scroll down on the left side box and choose smooth, and then it will bold all of the attributes that this attribute on the left can actually drive, and we're just going to hook it up to divisions. Since it defaulted to 0, the divisions of the smooth is going to go back to 0. Okay, that's not a big deal. Now, instead of having to choose the bat rig group and hit 3 to smooth your geometry, that you might not want to do that. There might be some controls in there, there might be geometry in there that you don't want smooth, like we don't want the nails smoothed. All you have to do now is select your master control that we created, and in the smooth attribute, just put in how many divisions you want. We constrain it from 0 to 4, so you can't do anything over 4, but I'm going to put 2 in, and then boom, the bat is now smooth. Okay? So let's just delete all the animation from this object. We're going to select everything, and I'm going to delete all by type, non-deformer history. Okay, you don't have to have everything selected, but I didn't realize that this was the only thing in the scene. I'm not used to this being the only thing in the scene. All right, and that is your finished prop rig. It's wonderful. You can do anything you want with it. Okay. So I'm going to save this. I'm going to give this to you guys in this in the file. You can download it and take a look and start rigging your own props. So I didn't think that was going to take that long. It's been 27 minutes. Oh my! But hopefully this is all you need now. Always rig your props and make sure you're using a referencing pipeline in your animation. Reference everything. If you need to replace something or anything, even copying animation is much easier when you're referencing, then you'll be in great shape. So great question. Thank you for bringing that up. And don't forget to send your questions in. I need more questions. I love them, and I just want more. So please send them in if you haven't already. Send them to webmaster@kennyroy.com. I promise I'll read them all, and I'll answer the ones I think will help the most people. Happy 4th of July again, and good luck with your animation. As always, rock on.